Sunday evening, and despite all of their efforts, it's well over 3 years now since we started these transmissions, and things have just got interesting.
Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them. On the 20th of November 2003, James Ignatius O'Rourke McMahon was elected councillor for the Failsworth East Ward of Oldham. Deeply ambitious, he ruthlessly rose to power, and by 2011, he was already leader of the council. In 2015, exploiting a Labour Party loophole, he became MP for Oldham West and Royton. If only the people of the town knew then what they now know. Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them.
A very good evening. It is Sunday the 2nd, and let me just fix my chair. It is Sunday the 2nd of October 2022. This is a Recusant 9 subscriber only transmission for the 133 of you. Last week there was 230 of you, so I'd like to think 100 of you watched it twice because you found it that interesting. Okay, it was around about this time 3 years ago, at least 3 years ago. It popped up on my memory, so it was about this time 3 years ago when Sean Fielding emailed me back late one night to abuse me, to harass me, to claim that it was all barefaced lies. At the time, he was the leader of Oldham Council, and he was adamant that I was getting locked up. And somehow, it was me who was responsible. Somehow it was me who was responsible for failing children. No. Not at all. Not at all. Good evening, Lynn. No, these aren't for sharing, I'm afraid, Lynn. Only on the basis that you guys pay, you guys contribute to keep me going. I earn just over £500 a month, not a week, £500 a month from your combined subscriptions. So I don't think it's fair, really, for me to open it up wider. If I do open it up wider, I do get the odd buy me a coffee, but I do put out free content. As you all know, I do put out free content during the week, and it makes no difference to my income. Very little. The only people who buy me a coffee are you lot anyway when I put out free content during the week. So that's what we're up to. So I don't know. I'd rather not. As I explained to you a couple of weeks ago, I do think it affects our ability to win an election, but that isn't on me. I'm not having that responsibility. Okay, let's get on with this evening. I want to show you something. I want to start by showing you something. Have a look at that picture next to me. That is the Mayor, ELAINE GARRY. So this is the week. This is the week when women in Iran are being murdered on the streets, fighting for their futures by taking off their hijabs. They're being killed by the Ayatollah's mates, the Islamist secret police and that lot. And it's where in Afghanistan this week, young women were butchered. young women were butchered. For daring wanting an education. They also belonged to a specific ethnic group that are persecuted. And on the same week, this is your mayor. This woman, ELAINE GARRY, Councillor ELAINE GARRY, from Failsworth, hosts an exclusive gathering of Bangladeshi men, so reinforcing that sectarian division and that misogyny that underpins this community. You can see him there, front and centre, ABDUL JABBAR, Daddy's associate, mate. What is he, Jabbar? You still refuse to say you didn't know him, didn't you, Jabbar? You're claiming there's no record of a reference or something, but you don't categorically deny either that you issued him or supported him in some way, and you definitely don't deny that you knew him. And look at them all. Bangladeshi men, Councillor Islam, the former chairman of one of the mosques. Look at them all. Look at them all. All Bangladeshi men. With the mayor, ELAINE GARRY. What is that, Elaine? Is that your postal vote team for Failsworth to try and rescue your seat? Is that your postal vote team? Or are you just reinforcing in this town the deep-seated prejudices? Who's the racist now? Who's the misogynist now? Or is it just as we suspect, in the same way you turned your back on white working class girls being gang raped by the Pakistanis and the Bangladeshis and nearly all Muslims? Look at that. Absolutely disgraceful woman. Mayor, housing. There you can see him. Councillor NAZRUL Islam, the dodgy Chadderton North councillor who ousted through an internal deselection process backed by McMahon. Indeed, Denise, Jim's puppet. And she indeed might as well hang her head in shame. Has she got daughters? I have no idea. But look at that woman. Disgraceful racism right there. Misogyny right there. The reinforcement of sectarian division and the oppression of women. Wearing the mayor's chains in the council chamber. She doesn't even know who her master really is. She walks around Failsworth claiming we are the racists. Sally Ann, this is the council chamber. This is the council chamber. Sorry, I had to share that. I'm disgusted by it. In a week where women are dying on the streets of Iran, Muslim women dying on the streets of Iran, a women-led rebellion in Iran, women fighting for their rights, dying on the streets of Iran, girls blown up in Afghanistan because of their ethnic background and because their dad wanted an education. And our mayor, ELAINE GARRY from Failsworth, hosts ABDUL, JABBAR, NAZRUL, Islam, and a exclusive bunch of Bangladeshi men. Indeed, Julie, look at the state of that. And I agree with you, Marlene. It's a total disgrace. It's a total disgrace. And you've never seen her in Failsworth, mate. How is she your councillor? How is she your councillor? Hopefully not for very much longer. Hopefully not for very much longer. David, I'll come with you to the Willow Tavern. Give me a shout, mate. Tell me when she's there. I'll go and ask her. I'll take this photograph in with me and ask her to her face. These people, it's not that they will sell out your children. They have sold out your children. So this shouldn't surprise any of you. This should not surprise any of you. Yeah. Okay. Moving on, because we like to share our animosity. Not animosity is the wrong word. There are our criticisms of politicians, irrespective of political party. I think you've seen that by now from me. Moving on, the Conservatives are trying to split. So the Oldham Conservatives are made up of two groups, the Saddleworth group and the Oldham group. And you recall how in June, July, I pleaded for the split to happen. And for the Oldham Conservatives to stand, to join with the Failsworth Independents as a joint opposition. And instead what they did was sit separately, but still present themselves as a united Conservative group, so that they could draw down their healthy allowances. Remember, Graham Sheldon is claiming £15,000 a year on top of his bonus, on top of his member's allowance, as the joint opposition leader with Howard Sykes, who also gets 15,000. Beth Sharp, while she was opposition deputy, was claiming 5, I think. And now it's Pam Byrne, I think, or it's not Pam Byrne, it's the other one. Luke, one of them, who's claiming the 5. Now they want to split. And the reason they want to split is because clearly they've had a falling out, but it's more than that. The Oldham Conservatives of Sharp, Quigg and Dave Arnott and Robert Barnes, wherever he is, although I doubt he gets a say in any of this anymore. The Oldham Conservatives want to split for self-preservation reasons. They're trying to distance themselves and hoping that they can form some form of unofficial allegiances with the Failsworth Independents and some others. They're trying to distance themselves so that they can hang on to their seats. Beth Sharp who, by the way, is, I think, currently at a Conservative conference. And I'm not going to nationally bash any of them. All I'm really interested in is in local issues. So I see all the national bashing of the Labour lot or the Conservative lots, and you see, I try not to get involved. Beth Sharp works for MPs, Conservative MPs directly. She's an advisor. She works up with them, who blocked the free school meals for poor children. So even though she represents Durka and Shulver, that's who she is. And at the grooming gang meeting, she was on a holiday in Mexico. Well, she takes her lead from Graham Sheldon, who was in his caravan an hour or so away, but still decided he wasn't important enough to come back for. And Dave Arnott and Lewis Quigg are deeply concerned that the emergence of a right and independence party will destroy them and take them out as councillors in one of two ways. And Robert Barnes, if he's still here, well, I doubt there's anyone here who believes that he managed to get over the line without the assistance that we provided. And they agree, Gary. They should not be allowed any opposition allowance if they split. So they had their meeting today. On a Sunday morning, they had their meeting. I know Max Woodvine didn't go to the meeting because he put a picture up on Facebook of him at a church. So I don't see why. I mean, it's stupid, isn't it? 10 o'clock on a Sunday morning. It's a stupid time. And if I was a church-going man or a mosque-going man, it's like the equivalent of having it during Friday prayers. It's a stupid, irresponsible time. But that's what these people are. I remember at their AGM, they had people turning up to vote who weren't even members because no one checked to see if they were members. So that's what we're up to. Just bear with me 1 second. I need to send the link to someone who hasn't got it, it seems. So just give me 1 second, please. So just give me 1 second, please. So I'm just replaying myself, it seems. Share, so is this how you copy? Oh, you just copy the link and you send it on. I see. It's as simple as that. So that's what's going on. They're voting to split. The reason they're splitting is because the Oldham lot are desperately trying to hold on to the seats come next May. They're hoping that the Right and Independence Party, of whose first meeting, I suppose, was held last Thursday, where I attended. I was a guest at. It went really, really well. They're hoping that the Right and Independence Party will only stand in Royton South and not in Royton North. Beth Sharp is hoping that an independent opposition of genuine gravitas, not the proud of type rubbish, but you know, where you properly put in effort, doesn't emerge. Doesn't emerge in St James's. I know Amoy stood there a number of times and has come up short. Now, I don't know if Amoy will stand again as an independent. But if she separated herself from the Paul Eric nonsense, or that stupid new party they've come up with, they've rebranded Proud of, haven't they? They've come up with some stupid name, as though it's, you know, it's one of those names that some people who have no link to a place come up with via some focus groups. What have they called it? The Oldham Metropolitan Party. Well, if Amoy or anyone else distance themselves from that banner that has failed them multiple times and are interested in standing in St. James, well, imagine what we could do for them. What difference we could do in St. James's. Arnott and Quigg will be finished. And Robert Barnes, well, we'll see. I mean, they're trying to push him under the bus themselves. There is an issue with that, and I'll get to that now before we carry on. But the Royton Independence Party looks like it'll have 3 candidates, definitely in Royton South. I don't know what they're doing in Crompton and what they're doing in Royton North yet, but you know, from acorns we grow. So that's where we're up to with the Conservatives. Now, if they have split, and I've got better things to do on a Sunday than chase up what they've done or not done in the meeting this morning, but if they have split, which is, I think, likely, because that's what they were meeting to try and force through. If they have split, then they shouldn't be allowed to sit as one group in the council to be the main opposition. If they sit as one group in the council to be part of the opposition, the main opposition, shared opposition with the Lib Dems, then what was the point of splitting? I suspect what will happen now is Lewis Quigg, Dave Arnott and Beth Sharp will be desperately phoning the Failsworth Independent Party, trying to get them on board. 2 months later than they should have done. And now for very different reasons. And your reasons why we do things matter, don't they? The reasons why we do things matter. 2 months ago, the reason was to try and force through an independent inquiry, to hold Amanda Chadderton to account. And now the reasons are, shit, we're not going to be councillors in 7 or 8 months' time. What can we do? Crazy. Crazy, crazy, crazy. Okay, let's bring this up. The swapping microphones. Sorry, I'm just reminding myself why I shouldn't be touching this. That'll do. Okay. Just give me a second. Let me try and work out what's going on here. The joys of okay. You have right and south. This is the mistake that many new parties make. This is the mistake that many new parties make, and I do need some WD-40 on that chair. It is the chair that's creaking. It's an old IKEA chair, Evan, I'm afraid. And you've got no chance with that, and I'll show you why. So what happens when a new party comes along is they look at it and they see this. Labour gets 1,000 votes, and I'm generalising. Conservatives get about 300. Lib Dems get about 300. You know, a combination of, so some might get 400 and 200 or 500 and 100, but that's what it tends to happen. And then the independents, get about 100. And the turnout in total is 1,700 votes. And then what they think, because the turnout of this 1,700 votes is about 25%. In the Asian areas it's higher, but it's about 25%. So they think if that's 25%, there's about 5,000 people who don't vote. So they come along and they think, okay, we're going to go and get this 5,000 to vote. So a new candidate comes along and thinks, all right, if I can get 200 off him, 100 off him, 100 off him, seriously, this is what they think, 100 off him, that's 500, Labour's down to 800, we just need 300 from here, and we can win. And each time, they fall flat on their face, and the maximum votes they get are what? Under a new candidate as an independent, what did John Lawrence get in Hollywood? I'm not picking on him, it's just that someone mentioned Hollywood. 100 votes? 200 votes? And that's because they don't think it through. And Labour and the Conservatives and the Lib Dems in short rely on this approach every time. It's a naive approach at best, an ignorant approach at worst. And they rely on this and they get over the line each time. So what do you do? what do you do? So say the Royton Independents come along. And it's the same in Royton South. They get about 1,100 votes. So Labour consistently get about 1,100 votes. The Conservatives are in the 900s. Lib Dems get 200, give or take. And the other independents get about 200. So how are the Royton Independents going to win here? And that's on a 30% turnout. So 70% don't vote. So 2,400. So give or take, I'm just generalising, 5,000 don't vote. The Royton Independents need to work out how to have people stay at home instead of vote. So because some people just won't vote for you. Some people, if they won't going to vote for Labour, won't vote for you at all. So your strategy on these people has got to be stay at home. And you can get 10%, consistently 10% to stay at home. You can get 20% angry enough to switch sides, and the strategy used has got to be different. So 220 can switch sides. So straight away, what you're fighting against is 800. But what happens is Labour, because this is where Amanda Chariton, the leader, is, everyone from the National Party will come in and bolster these and campaign like mad. So Labour will actually end up with 300 new votes. Happened with Arud Shah, happens with Sean Fielding. Consistently this happened with them. So even though you take votes off them, they secure new votes from this 5,000. So they'll take 10%, give or take, or at 5,000. And they'll end up with 1,100. So the winning line in Royton South is 1,100 votes. So how do you get 1,100 votes? 220, 300, no, is all you've got so far. Question for you. How many of these Conservative votes are Conservative voters or anti-Labour voters? They're not the same thing. They are not the same thing. And from what I can tell, at least half of them are anti-Labour. And you can get maybe another 10% to tactically vote, who are Conservative voters but will tactically switch sides. So at best, you've got 550 of that 900 swapping across to you. Happened in Failsworth. Happened in Chariton. When we got people to tactically support Robert Barnes. This you'll do nothing with. The Lib Dem support is Lib Dem support consistently. And the other, well, the likes of what's he called? Summit Prince. Bumped into him actually in Royton for the first time the other week. Oldham Heart. I think you'll find that their pride and their egos, and they have a right to it, they won't stand down. So they'll keep the 200. So you'll get nothing there. Some of the people might tactically vote, so say optimistically another 50. So you're up to 800. The winning line is you're up to 800. Can you go and get 400 people who have never voted before to vote? Can you go and get 400 people who have never voted before to vote? And what message do you have to give to those 400 people to vote? You can see. Oh. There's one message here. There's a second message here. There's a third and fourth message there. There's a fifth message here. And there's a sixth message there. And all of these 6 messages have got to be underpinned with one core message. And that is what the Royton Independents will have to do between now and May. Can they do that? Well, and this is why the smaller independents always get their ass handed to them. So like in, I'll go back to black. So like in Hollingwood, where else did they stand? Waterhead, for instance. Sure. Well, you know, to give him his credit, Markins came close. But what they end up doing is go and target the non-voters. You don't get enough of them, because you go and target the non-voters with one message. That message is Labour or Lib Dem is shit. Sorry for my language. It doesn't win you anything. And that's why no one comes out for these guys. Or not enough people ever come out for these guys. That's why no one comes out for them. So what we've been proposing, yeah, 1100 Royton South only. You'll need 1100 votes to win. And remember, it's an all-out. So what we've been proposing is a pledge of how to fix the town. And that pledge has got to be delivered by people with credibility. And then that pledge has got to be filtered for the 6 different audiences. One, non-voters. 2, tactical voters. 3, I call them fair weather voters. They're the ones that'll switch sides, aren't ideologically tied. And 4, stay at home ones. So get them to stay at home instead. And of course, the audience here is also for the how do you attract traditional Conservative voters, because the message you give them has got to be slightly different to the traditional Labour voters. And that's how complex it is, because it is complex. So the people with credibility, so if you're credible, 1, you have some form of professional expertise. And that doesn't mean you've got to be a doctor or a nurse or something, but you have a credible profession or some community activity. 2, you have a connection with the place. And if not a connection, you don't have to live there, in my opinion, but you need to understand the people who do live there. And the third one is you've got to have an attitude that is conducive to leadership. And the mistake people make, because voters don't want that, voters don't want these 2 things. They don't want people just to be popular and say what they want to hear. It gets you so far, but it never gets you enough votes. And they don't want people whose tactic is, I'm here to listen, you tell me what's wrong and how to fix it. Because if that was what people wanted, they wouldn't be asking you to be a leader. So you've got to have, you've got to have something about you. So you go to them with something. The starting point isn't, I'm here for you to tell me what's wrong. That doesn't make you credible. What makes you credible is going into a place, having taken the time or having an innate understanding of the issues that these people face. So the pledge. One was we create townships. What does that mean? Essentially, it means local decision making. That includes your planning and control of budgets. Genuine control, not the crap that the council are giving you, the crumbs, through their district committees. But ring-fenced 30% of all council tax. Or 20% or 25%, but a symbolic figure that actually can make a difference. Your townships might have an elected mayor, and for it to be feasible, you'd have nine councillors. And that's why I say for Royton South to work, really it needs 3 wards. It needs Royton South, Royton North, and in my opinion, looking at the demographics, Crompton. So the creation of local decision making via these townships. 2, hand in hand with that, is we pull out of the GMCA. Andy Burnham, we've given up powers to Andy Burnham without any of our say-so. Decisions that affect us are made in Church House on Deansgate by a South Manchester fake Liberal elite. So we pull out of the Greater Manchester Combined Authority, and we also get rid of parish councils. There's no need. You save your council tax money here, you save your council tax money here, and you get rid of these idiots making decisions on your behalf. And the third one, of course, is you make a difference in the town. And there's two things. One is an independent inquiry, because that's in your gift. Telford style into CSC. And the second one is you call in the government to take over the running of the council because it's corrupt. Liverpool style. And pulling out of the GMC also means that you'll never have that stupid clean air zone that he's trying to sneak back in. And it's as simple as that. It is no more complicated than that. But this idea, or the practice, which is what they've done elsewhere consistently, we'll just go out and get the people that never vote to come out and vote. It's a recipe for disaster. It's a recipe for disaster. So I know the Royton Independents are forming. Hopefully they'll have at least 6 candidates, if not 9. I know the Failsworth Independent Party are looking to take hold of 6, and they know that if they'd gone back, it's not their fault. But 6 on its own isn't enough, and they need to do something in Hollingwood. If not this time, next time. But this Labour are crap, Labour are crap, Labour are crap narrative that you're seeing all over the internet by some people, or the Tories are crap, the Tories are crap, it doesn't win you over voters. If you want to change the status quo, the power dynamics in a town such as ours, simply saying Labour are crap isn't going to get you over the line. Simply getting people angry isn't going to work. You've got to offer them an alternative, and that is the alternative. I've got to, after 3 or 4 years now of looking at this issue, that's the alternative I've got to. I think so, Julie. I think we need more people in Royton North. I don't know how many people they've got yet. But yes, I think they need more people. Amanda Chariton's hope is that you don't get organised in Royton and you don't put up 3 credible candidates with a message that resonates. I don't know, mate. No idea. No idea. I know John Lawrence is standing in Hollingwood, but he won't get over the line. He'll go nowhere near. I know the Oldham Metropolitan Party, or whatever they're called, are standing, I think, mainly in Saddleworth. Maybe Paul Shilton will try again. He won't get over the line. For him to get over the line, he's got to offer a viable alternative rather than what he has been doing. Because the Liberal Democrats are a very efficient and effective campaigning outfit. They punch above their weight. And Al-Hamdani, for whatever I think of him, is very good at campaigning. So no. I know they've got candidates in Saddleworth, but they won't do anything. You'll see them fall flat on their face. It's just Eroc's mates. They won't do anything. They'll get 300 votes, 400 votes, but they won't do anything. There's a Labour seat to be taken there, by the way. Hannah Roberts' son is a councillor there. So there's definitely a Labour seat to be taken out in Saddleworth, but they won't get there. The Oldham Borough, whatever they're called, won't get there. Mark Ince is interesting because he's developed a guy. He's learnt his lessons. He's an intelligent man. He's learnt his lessons from 2 campaigns. And he's finally realised he needs to stand as a Shaw independent of some form with a positive message for Shaw. He's credible in the area. He understands who he has to take votes from. And he's got an offer. You can see the deal that's been done in Shaw to do with the Southern Health Centre is now back on the table. Well, that's an arrangement between the Lib Dems and the Labour Party to try and make sure that the mates in Shaw and Crompton don't get ousted. So that's what that deal's about. There's no one in St James's, Marlene, that I know of. No one's come forward. I think Amoy will stand again, because Amoy always stands. It's not a criticism of her, she always stands. Do I think Amoy will win? Well, it depends who she stands on behalf of. She stood as an independent in her own right in past years and come up well short. She stood under the Proud Of banner and come up well short. If she stands under her own banner again, or the Oldham Metropolitan nonsense, I'll bet you my motorbike she'll come up short. If she speaks to Failsworth Independence and speaks to the Royton Independence Party and creates something that aligns with the wider vision elsewhere in the town, I think enough people will get behind her, and her campaign this year will be very different, but even then that's just one person. And Chadderton, no, I've not seen anything in Chadderton. So I think what will happen in Chadderton is you will see 9 Labour Party seats in Chadderton. I think Robert will lose his seat in Chadderton. And you'll see 9 Labour Party seats emerge in Chadderton. So that is where we... How you doing, Dean? Yeah, no, I think there would have been 2 seats up with the death of Gene Stretton, but it's an all-out, so I don't think there'll be anything. They'll just hold until next May, won't they? They won't have a by-election in November or December, but just for 4 or 5 months. I think Mark Ince will do really well. I think he'll do better now he hasn't got the baggage of Proud of Oldham and Saddleworth to follow him, because let's face it, all they did was cause him issues. They never helped. They never went out campaigning with him. They never went knocking on doors and delivering leaflets. Just caused him issues. when I last spoke with Markins, apparently he'd met with Paul Eric and told him that the votes he got were all his votes. Proud of Oldham's contribution was zilch, and he was going independent and creating his own party, and fair dues to him. Good luck to him. I think the mistake he's made, Jeanette, is I think they've got 2 candidates so far, haven't they? I'd have just gone with Mark on his own. It's as I've explained before, in an all-out, instead of voting 3 Lib Dems, a significant number of people would vote 2 Lib Dems and thinking I'll give Mark one of my 3. But he'll lose about a third of his, because one of those 3 will go to the other candidate they've got. I think it's Lisa. I don't know Lisa, it's not a criticism of her. But one of the other votes will go to Lisa. So he'll get 1 out of 3, 2 out of 3 votes instead of 3 out of 3 independent votes each time. And that will affect his numbers. They've got nothing in Crompton, Lynn. I think he just picked Crompton and included Crompton for no other reason than the parish council. But we get our way, we'd get rid of the parish council, we'd get rid of Inshawn, we'd get rid of Saddleworth. You'd create genuine townships with delegated powers and budgets and the resources to make a difference at a local level. That's what you do. And this is where we're up to. This is where we're up to. So let's see where we end up with Royton Independence. I mean, I'll just finish it off. I think this is where we'll end up, my thinking so far, with what the terrain looks like. This is what it'll end up with. Labour. Alexandra free. Medlock free. Werner free. Waterhead free. Calder still get 1 or 2, depending on who the whether Montaz stands with someone else. Chadderton will get 9. Hollingwood they'll get 3. And St James. I think if an independent doesn't emerge, they'll get 3 there. Lib Dems. Saddleworth, Western Lees. They'll get 3. Crompton, I think it's too early for the Royton Independence there. I don't think they'll be able to field 3 there, and I don't think Mark will be able to field anyone credible there. I think they'll end up with 3 there. And Shaw, I think Mark Hints will take 1. They'll retreat to Saddleworth North and Saddleworth South. They might not get George Humes 1, and that might go to the Lib Dems, so you never know. But between them, that's that. And that leaves and others. So Failsworth West. I think if the Royton Independence Party put up 3 candidates in Royton North, they'll take them out. I think they'll take him out in Royton South as well. And of course you've got St Mary's as well, how could I forget? Well, 2 really, because after will be after will be interesting. So we've got Coldust, maybe 1 at best. And St Mary's. After did vote with the CSC inquiry, and I'm sure if you marking them engaged with him, that's what it looked like. So after the all outs, the problem you've got is because I'll show you. Because of this, well, there's no opposition, and this, and this, and I'm highlighting these because these aren't cartel seats. There's no cartels really in Hollingwood. There's none really in, well, there's 3 in Chadderton, but not in one of the Chadderton wards, 1 or 2 of the Chadderton wards. There definitely isn't in St James's, but because of the lack of opposition, this lot will have 9. 8 or 9, because they might get 1 in Saddleworth. This lot will have 5 or 6. I reckon 14, doable. But the problem we've got they're over the line. And they're over the line because we failed to put up independents here, here, and here that can win. And that's why you mentioned Hollingwood, and that's why you mentioned Chadderton and St James, because you know the same as I do. You know the same as I do. And remember, there's no elections for 2 years after that. I don't believe you should pay council tax towards the parish council charge. I don't think you should pay a mayor's charge either for Andy Burnham's salary, and people like his Sean Fielding's girlfriend who is hired. As his team is going up year on year, and your council tax is increasing at double, triple digits in terms of the mayor's precept. But without the candidates, we're nowhere. And I think we're close in Royton, the Royton Independence Party. Them taking seats, I mean, even if they extend to Crompton, it make it in the scheme of things. I don't mean it disrespectfully. It doesn't stop Labour, does it? Because he'll be fighting the Lib Dems. It's the problem I've always had with the Proud Of lot. It's a Saddleworth pissing contest. The fight, if you want to get Labour out of this town, in the places where you can win, it's Royton North, Royton South, St James, Hollingwood, and 2 of the Chadderton wards. 1 where the age and block vote hasn't took over. That's what we're saying, isn't it? Waterhead shouldn't be solidly Labour the way it is, even with the Clarksfield sort of block vote. It shouldn't be. There's enough people there with a viable, credible candidate. Or 2 candidates, 3 candidates. St James, traditional white working class in the main. Why did they vote Beth Sharp? They got her over the line because of the work, because of the campaign we've run. So if a credible candidate or a credible team came forward in St James, if people who've never voted Tory before went and voted Tory, the sure as all will vote for one of their own. Yeah, I agree, Dean. They take time. So the best scenario at this moment is that an independent coalition becomes the formal opposition in May. What we've got going for us, I think, unless something happens, I hope not, but what we've got going for us is a general election will be in January, if it runs the full 2 and a bit years, January 2024. Or December. What I mean by that, it won't be at the same time as a local election. Because if it's at the same time as a local election, I think with the way things are, people who go out to vote will put 2 crosses, one in Labour for the Nationals and one in Labour for the locals, and they'll just do that. So we're lucky that that has now been split. There won't be a general election next May. You might call one earlier, the May after, but that makes no difference because it's a fallow year for us. So we'll see. Now give me a couple of minutes and I will refill this and I'll go through some of the CSE content I wanted to go through with you. So just bear with me whilst I do this. Yeah, I'll just refill my drink and I'll be back. Sorry, mate, I don't know how Robert is. I did ask someone myself, because I've seen how Wilby's been taunting him, I suppose. Excuse me, my leftover poppadom I found when I went to refill my drink. I don't think he's well. He's gone very silent. They've all run away from him. No one's issued a statement. Everyone knows who it is, or people do know who it is. They're just talking about him. So we'll see. But no, I've heard no. I think it'd be interesting, Dave. I think it'd be interesting if he turns up at the next council meeting. This is what I want. Too late. No, I didn't have a samosa. Anne Platt's brother caught me while I was coming in. He had a book from Anne for me to read. And I'd picked up a takeaway from a place near the hospital called Mozabite. It's a takeaway, but no, I don't have takeaway samosas, Marlene. They're never nice. Yeah, I think what Wilby's been doing is taunting him by, repeatedly suggesting and all the rest of it. Okay. I shared this. It's something I'd wrote last month. In July, actually. 3 months ago, nearly. And this is what we've got. Because it's just been hidden. It's just been completely hidden. And this is direct quotes out of the report. There's 18 children, you can see that. Because I'm trying to work out how many children. But there's 18 children just to the shisha bars. Just linked with the shisha bars. They identified a couple of shisha bars. They're giving children numbers, child 11 and child 15. Had spent the night at these shisha bars. They found child 5, child 6, child 7, child 8. I like how they're giving these people children numbers. They confirm that child 9 in her early teens, so 11, 12, 13, had been dragged off the street. There's child 10 there as well. Remember, Ridgway, Newsom and Andy Burnham won't tell us how many children. And this is just linked to the shisha bars during this period. Private rooms to rent upstairs. So we're clear, that's renting upstairs for sex. That's what that is. In separate reports, these rooms had the windows blacked out. And they had CCTV in there. So not only could they have sex, they could watch it afterwards. No doubt sell the videos of them raping, children. That's what was taking place here. And blackmail, furthermore, blackmail these children. And that way they've got them forever. The assurance review confirms how McMahon's team at Oldham Council celebrated killing the story. Senior Communication Officer A was Carl Marsden. Now works at Oldham College. His wife is Dawn Marsden. At the time, she worked at the Oldham Chronicle as their chief reporter. And when she lost her job there, she became PA for Jim McMahon. And now works for Angela Rayner. So that's how this lot are linked. Carl Marsden and Dawn Marsden. There's another one linked to these two from the Oldham Chronicle that Dean reminded me of, and Warren. And that person's name is Alex Carey. Alex Carey was at the time also at the Oldham Chronicle. And do you know who he works for now? Alex Carey is now the senior media manager for Andy Burnham. So as well as a layer of politicians at the heart of this, there's also a tier of media individuals who are linked to the Oldham Chronicle at the time. None of this would have been possible without the Oldham Chronicle's role at the time, involving both Carl Marsden, who celebrated killing the story. And I'll quote this, and it's out of the report. You can see it's out of the report. We have been provided with a copy of an email sent by Senior Communication Officer A to Chief Executive A on the 24th of October. After a series of phone calls and extremely robust conversations with Kevin Fitzpatrick, he has now backed down and agreed to completely drop the stories on A. And here you go. Redacted as not within our terms of reference. Do you see it? Redacted as not within our terms of reference. So that is confirmation from Ridgway and Newsom that there were child sex exploitation stories that they did not look at because it was not within their terms of reference. So when it suited them, they ignored their terms of reference and went out to claim this cover-up wasn't politically motivated, or it wasn't a cover-up, it was just mistakes. When determining why something happened wasn't in the terms of reference, they went out on a limb to say why they thought it didn't happen with no evidence whatsoever, apart from the council say so, if you believe that to be evidence, that McMahon wasn't involved in the cover-up. But when it comes to actually stories of gang raping children, that is outside of the remit, so perhaps it wasn't to do with shisha bars, perhaps they're being raped or gang raped somewhere else, outside of school. They've redacted it as it's not within their terms of reference. So after a series of phone calls and extremely robust conversations with Kevin Fitzpatrick, he has now backed down and agreed completely to drop the stories on raping of children outside of our terms of reference. and Councillor V. I also, after some fact finding with Chief Inspector, that's Hayden Roberts, convinced him there was no issue with private members clubs in Oldham. So that's right. That shows the police were complicit. Greater Manchester police were complicit in the cover-up as well. This paragraph is significant. That's why I want to go through it with you. I also, after some fact-finding with Chief Inspector A, convinced the journalist there is no issue with private members clubs in Oldham. All premises referred to in that infamous email are now out of operation and we monitor them every week. That simply isn't true. And this is the best bit. And this is from, so we're clear, Communications Officer A is Carl Marsden, who now works at Oldham College. In comparison with other neighbours across Lancashire, we simply don't have a problem. So that's not we don't have a problem. Our children aren't being groomed and gang raped. In comparison with other neighbours across Lancashire, he is obviously not in a position to make that statement. He's a communications officer. He's not in a position to make that statement. But the statement he's making is, we're not as bad as other places. So in Rotherham, which admittedly is Yorkshire, where they were forced to admit at least 1,400 children were groomed and gang raped, in comparison, Oldham isn't as bad. We simply don't have a problem. He has also now dropped that story. It has taken nearly 2 days, but killing all three is a right old result in the end. So he's celebrating, hiding, covering up news emerging of the grooming and gang rape of the town's children. That's what he's done. And of course, the chief executive would have been in direct dialogue with the leader of the council on this issue, Jim McMahon, because he's made reference to in that email. Indeed, John. How do we know if we do not know how many children were raped? And if there was any doubt of McMahon's direct implication, here is the next bit. You can see 4106 and this was 493. So later on in this report, leader A is Jim McMahon, and they are celebrating again. So they are celebrating hiding news from parents of our town of the cover-up of the grooming and gang rape of our town's children. They are celebrating. We have not seen how Carl Marsden responded to these questions. However, on the 16th of February 2014, Jim McMahon alerted Carl Marsden that the BBC was to broadcast Kevin Fitzpatrick's story in the Sisha bars. Carl Marsden's reply is revealing. These aren't my words. This is directly in the report. You can see direct screen grabs from within the report. Thanks, Jim. As discussed, we've picked up and monitored. So Jim McMahon had gone to Carl Marsden directly, bypassed the chief executive, and gone to Carl Marsden directly. Thanks, Jim. As discussed, we've picked up and monitored. Carl Marsden wasn't interviewed or did not come forward and give evidence here. Why? He works at Oldham College. Why? What did you discuss, Carl Marsden? with Jim McMahon. We've picked up and monitored. The timing of it is purely down to me kicking off and insisting he expand the question GM-wide. So don't focus on Oldham, where the problem is. Expand it Greater Manchester wide. Then delaying our answers. Look at this. Strategically, he's celebrating delaying the council's answers so that he was forced to widen the net. Being ultra combative to ensure it did not become an Oldham-centric story, and I'm confident this isn't. Sorry, they did speak to Carl Marsden. We questioned senior communication officer on the approach they had taken. They maintained that their only intention was to ensure that the story was not just about Oldham, but also about the context within the Greater Manchester area. Bullshit. Carl Marsden is lying there. That's what he's doing. Read this and tell me he's not lying or deceiving. The timing of it is purely down to me kicking off and insisting he expand the question GM-wide, then delaying our answers so that he was forced to widen the net. Why is Carl Marsden and Jim McMahon, why do they have the intention that to make sure that the story was not just about Oldham, but also about the context within the Greater Manchester area? Senior Communication Officer A explained they, who are they? Well, clearly from that they, the two emails he sent out, one was to Jim McMahon and the other one was to the Chief Executive of the Council, Charlie Parker at the time. The issues were wider and involved individuals acting across borough boundaries across Greater Manchester and beyond. The communication officer was unable to recall, Carl Marsden was unable to recall how they responded to the questions set by Kevin Fitzpatrick and could no longer access that information. In that email, Kevin Fitzpatrick is clearly referencing to Jim McMahon the value he holds in his personal relationship with McMahon. Apparently it wasn't a personal relationship. And neither Ridgeway or Newsom will publish that email. None of the newspapers will publish that email, and it's not even in the report. In here as well, in the report as well, is black and white confirmation that even though the police insisted that the council notify schools, no one can explain why at the multiple head teachers meetings no one from the council notified the head teachers. Why did no one from the council notify? This is what Oldham Council now want to do. It was one of the last items. The PS, by the way, we've won Britain in Bloom or some nonsense. Yeah. So I'm trying to get this so I can show it you. That'll do. Review into historic safeguarding practices in the Borough of Oldham. This is an official Oldham Council document, as you can see, with their logo there. What they want to do is set up this steering group. To ensure cross-party oversight and involvement in improving safeguarding services and supporting victims. Under Operation Sherwood, so the number of priority actions, let's just go through them. Under Operation Sherwood, Greater Manchester Police will investigate, so they're not investigating, they will investigate all allegations of historic sexual abuse. So this isn't just to do with the Pakistani grooming gangs. They are now widening it so they can get rid of the racial dimension of this, because these are racially motivated crimes and they want to run away from that. This will include those highlighted in the CSE review, but also any other historic allegations from any time period. The operation will be clearly promoted to encourage other victims and witnesses come forward. Okay, you know why that's important? The identification of children who are groomed and gang raped as part of Operation Sherwood only comes from two places. One, those children that were specifically referenced as case studies in that bogus assurance review. Was it 10 of them? 11 of them maybe? And then, instead of the hundreds, if not thousands, of case files that the police have, or the council's social services department has, the onus is to encourage other victims and witnesses to come forward. So if other victims and witnesses don't come forward, and remember these victims have been already failed by the police, if they don't come forward, then they're not going to be investigated. That's what this is suggesting. The council has identified dedicated additional resource. It doesn't say what that resource is. Both by supporting the work of the investigation teams and providing help and ongoing support to victims who come forward. Nonsense. It's absolute bogus nonsense. They've got a helpline of some crap. And people just aren't engaging with it. Not enough people are engaging with it. So that's the first one. The second bit is they want to support victims of child sex exploitation. They're claiming that they have a GMP and Oldham Council victim strategy. That victim strategy, no one's seen, by the way, because they're saying it has already been developed. No one's seen that. And the strategy is a helpline. The strategy is a helpline. And they're going to signpost victims on a range of issues, including mental health and housing. This helpline, you can see again, all it is a phone line. Amanda Chadderton, why don't you share with us how many victims have contacted the helpline? A victim strategy is setting up a phone line. by a council who are complicit in the gang rape of children. And it's up to the children who are now young adults to phone the council, asking for help with housing. The council will provide funding via an appropriate support organisation. What constitutes an appropriate support organisation? To provide advocacy for victims, including signposting to independent legal advice and support. Well, the only genuine independent support organisation I know, advocacy, is the Maggie Oliver Foundation. Have they funded the Maggie Oliver Foundation? The council will convene. So again, will. You see the word will here? It will provide funding. And now the council will convene a victim support advisory group led by victim survivors and chaired by the local organisation Keep Our Girls Safe. They've not spoken to a single victim to decide if they want to take part in any bullshit advisory group. What's the purpose of the advisory group? The victims were in the public gallery screaming for Amanda Chadderton to support a motion for a public inquiry. She refused. So what is this advisory group's purpose? Which victims are on it? Absolute bullshit. And as for Keep Our Girls Safe, it receives its funding 100% from the council. It gets about 20 grand a year if that. And I don't want to criticise them, but it's bullshit. It has no expertise in this. It's basically a glorified youth project. I'll tell you how many people have phoned the helpline. Stallion, give me 1 second. I've got it. I've got the data from a couple of days ago. Give me 1 second. The first 28 days, the helpline, 119 calls in total. They decided 91 of these calls were deemed malicious. It's like young women swearing at them. 28 required interviews and statements. And of the 28 that required interviews and statements, do you know how many had been contacted? Do you know how many had been contacted? 0. Not a single interview had been taken place or statement had took place. That's the data I've got on my phone from a reputable source. Well, it's obvious, isn't it, Sheila? It's obvious who should have been that independent organisation, and it's obvious if there is to be any form of advisory group, who should set the terms of reference. And it should be delegated to the foundation, not some council-funded proxy project. It's exactly what it is. Bullshit statement. Council safeguarding and children's social care services are inspected regularly by Ofsted. If any of that was relevant, then Ofsted would have told us, instead of me telling us, that the council had covered up and failed hundreds, thousands, how many they won't say, of our young people who were groomed and gang raped. So Ofsted in this context are not fit for purpose, because if Ofsted had been fit for purpose, Ofsted would have discovered what we've forced out. And the Getting to Good board, which is chaired by the Department of Education, exactly the same criticism. If it was fit for purpose, your board would have identified this. And Oldham also has a multi-agency safeguarding partnership chaired independently. Bullshit. Because again, if that was true and it was fit for purpose, they would have spoken out. The independent chair would have spoken out. Where is the independent chair's statement? Where is the independent chair's statement on this assurance review? Nowhere. To encourage greater and quicker improvements to services, Oldham Council will, see that word again, will work with sector leading councils from across the country who can share best practice in safeguarding and specifically CSE practice. Just bullshit, it's just gobbledygook. A series of learning events will be held to encourage learning for professionals on CSE and complex safeguarding practices from the Oldham Review. Who are the professionals? Who are going to facilitate the learning events? Are you going to talk about the racially motivated nature of these crimes and the political nature of the cover-up? No. So if you're not, the Home Office, and they're making reference to the Home Office independent inquiry into child sexual abuse and other national inquiries. Maggie Oliver and others have ridiculed the Home Office independent inquiry, and those of you who followed this, the Telford inquiry only took place as an independent inquiry because the national investigation omitted Telford. And now we know why it omitted Telford, because Telford exposed the racially and religiously motivated nature of these crimes and the political cover-up. So what Rotherham had done 10 years ago or so, Telford had done 10 years later. That's the important bit. Nothing has been learnt. So that's gobbledygook. Providing assurance. Who are they providing the assurance to? Are they providing the assurance to the victims, the survivors, the families, the community? No. They just want to provide assurance to themselves that they can move on. This is the bit I'm really want to focus in on. Excuse me, my iPad is hang up now. Not better, there you go. Ensuring cross-party oversight and involvement. Oldham Council will establish a cross-party assurance group. So they've blocked a motion calling for an independent inquiry. Instead, the very same councillors who claimed it was barefaced lies and have been neck deep in the cover-up are now creating a cross-party assurance group. They're now creating a cross-party assurance group to provide scrutiny and direction for the council's improvement activity in relation to safeguarding. Look what they've done. It's not in relation to the cover-up of the grooming and gang rape of children. They've widened it to in relation to safeguarding. They don't want to deal with this. They want to hide it as a footnote on wider issues to do with safeguarding that have nothing to do with how we've got here. The terms of reference for this group will be determined by an all-member engagement process and agreed at full council. We'll review our current member training offer on CSE, so they won't even... They will review. How kind of them. How decent of them. They will review our current member training offer on CSE. Well, what's your current training offer on CSE? You don't have one. Because if you had one, your leader wouldn't have stood up and claimed it was barefaced lies. With advice and support from charities and advocacy groups. Which charities, which advocacy groups are going to work with a council that covered up the grooming and gang rape of children, blocked calls for a public inquiry, that victims and survivors have said they want nothing to do with, and that even the Police and Crime Commissioner, Beverly Hughes, Andy Burnham's sidekick, has acknowledged were less than candid, lied. Which charity and advocacy group? Oldham Council will promote the work we do. What work do you do? We'll improve our safeguarding education and training offer to more pupils and parents. So they are aware of the risk of child abuse. We don't want you to raise awareness just on the risk of child abuse. This was always specific and you're hiding it in the gobbledygook. This was always specific and it was always about the racially motivated crimes. That is the systematic grooming and gang rape of white working class children in our town by predominantly Pakistani, occasionally Bangladeshi, almost exclusively Muslim men. And the subsequent political cover-up of those crimes. That's what this was about. So I'm just trying to find my mouse, Denise. So once I found my mouse, I'll be able to put your comment on. The steering group. Let me find the. Let me find it. The steering group involves offering the Failsworth Independents a seat on it. My advice to the Failsworth Independents is to go nowhere near it. My advice to the Failsworth Independents is to go nowhere near this. Because by going on this, you endorse it. You endorse the cover-up. I'd go nowhere near it. You know what's happening, don't you? You can see it, can't you? Unless we vote Bashforth and Amanda Chadderton out and Royton South, unless we get the Royton Independents going and at the very least get rid of those three, particularly Amanda Chadderton. If that doesn't happen, you know it. They've got away with it. Because the Conservatives won't back you, the Lib Dems won't back you, FIPs on their own aren't enough. They've excluded members of the public from the council chamber. They've got the police to turn up, to threaten you with arrest should you turn up. They've got Charlotte Green, the local newspaper, the Oldham Times as well. Rabid attack dog. McMahon calling us all racist. And now they've set up this nonsense, this action plan, with a cross-party steering group or whatever they call it. And they've got away with it. The only way is by beat them at the ballot box. We go back to our pledge and we ask for decent people to come forward as candidates. You can go to council meetings, mate. Will going to council meetings be any effective anymore? It's not a democracy in this town. This is tyranny. This is absolute tyranny. The Conservative government won't intervene. You heard what Liz Truss said. She just played to the crowd during the Conservative elections for Prime Minister, leader. She just played to the crowd. Nothing will come from her. It was a Conservative government whose report was a cover-up. Priti Patel's report was a cover-up. I've said it before, it'll go down in history as one of the most worst cover-ups this country's ever seen of the way that report was produced. These are racially motivated crimes involving people who look like me who target white young girls. And the cover-up, particularly in a town like ours, is to maintain the political status quo. And sacrificing 100, 1,000, 10, 100,000, I don't know. They won't tell us. Working class white girls at the altar of their interpretation of multiculturalism is a price worth paying to these people. I don't know, Nicola. I don't know. I mean, my position is really simple, the place I'm up to currently. I've got one outstanding court case. My income is entirely dependent on the subscriptions I get, and they've stalled out about 130 of you. You can say, are we going to fundraise for leaflets again? But who designed the leaflets? Who'll print the leaflets? Who'll stick the neck out? Everything I've gone through beforehand in terms of a strategy, who'll do that? So it's not just as simple as fundraising for some leaflets, I don't think, sadly. No. Because the decision is with the Conservative government, and the Conservative government don't give a fuck about your kids. And that's not me being anti-Conservative. That's a consequence of what I've seen so far. Do you not think the Conservatives know what's going on in Oldham? Labour don't want one. because it'll expose them, and the Conservatives can't be bothered to launch one because it's not in their interest, or they don't think it's important enough. The Conservative leader in Oldham going on holiday and the deputy leader going off to Mexico is just amplified by 1,000 at the national level. You're just not important enough. We're just not important enough. The only way you'll get a public inquiry is, you won't get one, it's an independent inquiry, Telford style. And the only way we'll get a Telford style independent inquiry is if we commission one ourselves, and the only way we can do that is by taking control of the council. In Telford, they campaigned and fought for 10 years. It was a decade's worth of work. Oh, it's just grandstanding by the inaccelerated special measures proven Pakistani rape gang protecting Greater Manchester Police. It's just grandstanding, Sheila. It's bollocks, nonsense. Now, Gary, the government aren't bothered. I'm sorry, Sally-Ann, you'll have to give me a bit more information. I don't know what your acronym is. I hope VIP don't join that committee, assurance group, or the council. I hope they stand up in the council chamber at the next council meeting and refuse to have anything to do with it. You can see, if you remember the last council meeting, how Sam Al-Hamdani was getting really excited. Yes, we'll have our committee, we'll have an assurance group. Don't join it. If you've got any sense, you won't join it, because you won't be able to make any difference in there. When you then speak out, they'll use the fact that you're members of that against you. And if you think you're going to get any information from that assurance review that you otherwise wouldn't get, because that's the only reason why you'd be part of that, no. No, they don't want it exposed, Gary, because internationally we have this exposed. Then internationally, the headline, not just nationally, internationally, the headline is that Pakistani rape gangs, Muslim rape gangs, because that's how they'll be, described, have been left free to gang rape, groom gang rape and traffic tens of thousands of working class white children over, what, 1 decade, 2 decades, with the full knowledge of the politicians and the police and those that involved in the running of our councils. And they all turned a blind eye. And then when confronted with it, instead of dealing with it, they sought to demonize the people who raised it. They will be shamed across the world because of it. Forget fighting child trafficking in Pakistan or somewhere else. Our own children in our own country, we turned our backs on. Or that. It's just political gesturing, isn't it? The money's being used, top sliced. It's not even a management fee. They've took most of it. So the 3.5, there's only a little left. I mean, I look at that. I've stopped talking about some of these other things, sadly, and I might get back to it, but I can't be asked. Because the other political parties jump on it and make, take value from it. I think it's very clear what's going on with that. They're just grandstanding politically. They've top sliced most of the money for themselves as a helpline and crap like that. So very little of the money actually goes to people who need it. If any of it at all will go to people who need it. It reminded me of, during COVID, what did they not pay £500,000 to Oldham Community Leisure to use storage facilities there when they had the Queen Elizabeth Hall sat empty. Just siphoning money. They're just siphoning money to fund themselves. And that's what they've been doing for decades. By keeping us poor, they get grants. They make sure as little of those grants actually go into dealing with the issue. It's about funding them and keeping themselves in jobs and keeping themselves well paid. Solving the issues in Oldham doesn't suit the council. It doesn't suit Amanda Chadderton's Labour lot. It doesn't suit the Lib Dems. It doesn't even suit the Conservatives. Solving our problems in our town doesn't suit any of the political classes or any of the political groups in this town. This is a town whose main industry is pimping poverty. They want more of it, not less of it. Looking forward to the ongoing stuff with the Royton Independents. It's exciting. Failsworth Independents have helped them. They turned up to the event I saw. Spoke really well. I think it's in Failsworth Independents and Royton Independents and Montaz and or anyone else that emerges to work together to form allegiances. I genuinely think of all the independents I've come across who have a chance at working together will benefit all of them. In an ideal world, come May, we have the strength and the resources and the energy to do what we did to Arood Shah and Hannah Roberts and the others, and Sean Fielding and the others before then. It's whether we can keep the momentum going. I'm sure you know we've a core group of us, but people are fickle. And Amanda Chadderton, Barrelgate Bashforth and the others are relying on that. And they're relying on the national anti-conservative swing, because that's what's taking place nationally, for us to get lost in that and disgruntled people go and vote for them and ignore the cover-up of the grooming and gang rape of our town's children. So it's up to us. So it's up to us. And in the end, it's always the same. The change that comes has only ever been the consequence of a handful of people who refused, despite the odds, to be silenced, and who refused, despite what may come of them, to stop fighting for justice. Every time the establishment injustice has been exposed, challenged, and overcome, it has been because of people like you, ordinary people like you. And I just hope there's enough of us who'll be here come next May to get it over the line and the work that we need to do before then. If you find value in these transmissions, the Facebook post in particular, please, when I put them up, please do share. There's some sort of Facebook shadow, whatever they're doing. It's not really a ban, but they're restricting my post. They have been doing since they tried to claim I was inciting terrorism, which was, we know where that came from. So the only way, look at it. Have a look yourself on social media. The coherent, targeted, intelligent, reasoned opposition comes from us. And the only way we can get that out there is for it to be amplified. So please, when you do see the post, like the post, share the videos. Tell your friends, your neighbours, strangers. There's this man who posts on a Sunday night, puts videos up on a Sunday night and throughout the week for free, and posts and articles, and how the police and the council have desperately been trying to shut him down, and all he's done is expose what they're up to. But more than that, mobilise the town and mobilise communities to stand up for themselves and take them out at the ballot box. So it's up to us. A very, very good evening. I've got some exciting news next week to share with you. I don't want to share it just now, but I have generally got some exciting news to share with you next week. So I'll keep that for later. Good night. Take care.
Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them.